If every month ends with you waiting for the next paycheck to arrive, you're not alone and you're not broken, but you are missing something. And Scripture has known what it is for thousands of years. Here are the 5 Bible secrets that break the paycheck to paycheck cycle permanently. Secret 1. The cycle isn't a money problem, it's an order problem. Most people who live paycheck to paycheck assume the solution is more income. If they just earned a little more, they think the cycle would finally break. So they wait for the raise, the promotion, the side hustle that takes off, and when it comes, they discover something disorienting. The cycle continues. The spending simply expands to meet the new income, and the end of the month still arrives before the next paycheck does. This is one of the most documented patterns in personal finance, lifestyle inflation, and Scripture identified it thousands of years before any financial researcher did. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." The fool in that proverb isn't poor. The fool has food and olive oil, resources, income, provision. The problem isn't the amount, it's what happens to it the moment it arrives. It gets consumed immediately, completely, and the cycle resets. The paycheck-to-paycheck trap is almost never caused by insufficient income. It's caused by an order problem, the sequence in which money gets used the moment it arrives. In most households, the order is income arrives, spending begins, and saving or giving happens with whatever is left. There is almost never anything left, not because the income is too small, but because spending always expands to fill the space available. The system is designed to consume everything before stewardship ever gets a chance. God's order reverses this completely. 1 Corinthians 14:33 tells us that God is not a God of disorder, and that principle extends into finances. His sequence is specific: give first, save before spending, then live within what remains. This order isn't just a budgeting tip, it's a declaration of trust, an act of saying, before a single bill is paid, I trust you with what remains. And that act, repeated consistently, begins to create something the reversed order never could: margin. Margin is the space between what comes in and what goes out. It's the breathing room that turns every unexpected expense into a crisis, into an inconvenience. Without margin, the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle is structurally inevitable, not because of bad luck, not because of low income, but because the system has no space built into it for anything other than consumption. Here's what makes this secret powerful. You don't need more money to change the order. You need a decision. The order changes the moment the next paycheck arrives, and you move giving and saving first before anything else gets touched. That single shift applied consistently begins breaking the cycle from the inside out. But changing the order only works if the second secret is in place, and most people skip it entirely. Secret 2. You need a name for every dollar before it arrives. Money without a destination disappears. This isn't a personality flaw, it's a mathematical certainty. Unassigned money gets absorbed by the path of least resistance: the small purchase here, the impulse there, the subscription that renews quietly, the dinner out that felt justified in the moment. None of these individually feels significant. Together, they consume everything. Proverbs 29:18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." Most people read that as a verse about life purpose or spiritual direction, but the principle applies with striking precision to finances. Where there is no plan for the money perishes. It doesn't go anywhere meaningful, it just goes. A budget is not a punishment. It's not a restriction. It's a vision document for your money, a declaration made in advance about where every dollar is going before it has a chance to go somewhere by default. The person who decides on paper before the paycheck arrives exactly how much goes to giving, how much goes to savings, how much covers fixed expenses, and how much is available for everything else, that person is no longer reacting to money, they're directing it. And that shift from reacting to directing is one of the most practical expressions of stewardship in Scripture. The parable of the talents in Matthew 25 makes this principle impossible to ignore. The servants who were praised weren't the ones who received the most. They were the ones who were intentional with what they were given. They made decisions. They put resources to purposeful use. The servant who was rebuked wasn't the one who lost money through bad investments. He was the one who did nothing, who let what he had sit without direction, without purpose, without a plan. Unintentional stewardship, Scripture says, is not neutral. It produces the same result as no stewardship at all.
Practically, this looks like sitting down before the month begins or before the paycheck lands and giving every expected dollar a name. Rent gets its name, groceries get their name, savings gets its name first, not last, giving gets its name first, not last, and every category gets a realistic number, not a hopeful one. A budget built on what you wish you spent is just a list of good intentions. A budget built on what you actually spend, adjusted towards what you want to spend, is a tool. Here's what most people also miss about this secret. The budget doesn't need to be perfect to work. It just needs to exist. An imperfect plan that you follow most of the time produces infinitely better results than no plan at all. The goal isn't precision, it's intentionality. And intentionality, practiced month after month, is exactly how the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle loses its grip. Which leads directly to the third secret, the one that most people know intellectually but almost nobody actually practices. Secret 3. Small and consistent beats large and occasional every time. One of the most paralyzing myths about breaking the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle is that it requires a large, dramatic financial gesture, a windfall, a significant raise, a moment where enough extra money arrives to finally get ahead. And because that moment rarely comes, or comes and gets absorbed before it does any structural good, people stay stuck waiting for a breakthrough that the Bible never promised would arrive the way they're expecting. Proverbs 6:6-8 points to the ant. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, overseer, or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. The ant doesn't wait for a large surplus. It doesn't delay storing until the conditions are ideal. It works with whatever is available, consistently, without anyone telling it to, because small and consistent is how storehouses actually get built. This principle dismantles one of the most common excuses for staying in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. I don't have enough to save. The ant principle says the amount is irrelevant. What matters is the habit. $5 transferred to savings the day the paycheck arrives before anything else gets spent is infinitely more powerful than $50 saved occasionally when something happens to be left over. The first builds a habit and a storehouse. The second builds neither, because leftover almost never materializes.
The mathematics of small consistency are also far more encouraging than most people realize. $5 a day is $150 a month. $150 a month is $1,800 a year, enough for a genuine emergency buffer that stops the cycle of reaching for credit every time something unexpected happens. That $1,800 doesn't require a raise. It doesn't require a windfall. It requires one decision, repeated daily, that most people dismiss as too small to matter. But God has never dismissed small, faithful obedience. The mustard seed, the widow's 2 coins, the 5 loaves. Scripture is full of small things that God used precisely because someone was faithful with them. There's also a deeper spiritual dynamic at work in small consistency that large gestures never produce. When you save $5 today and $5 tomorrow and $5 the day after, you're training your relationship with money. You're practicing the discipline of not consuming everything that arrives. You're building the muscle of delayed gratification, which is one of the most countercultural and powerful financial skills a person can develop in a world designed to extract every dollar the moment it appears. Here's the practical application. The next time the paycheck arrives, before a single bill is paid or a single purchase is made, transfer the smallest amount you can genuinely commit to consistently, even if it's $10, into a separate savings account. Name that account, give it a purpose, and do it again next paycheck. The amount matters far less than the unbroken chain of decisions that follows. But here's the trap that stops most people right at this point, and it's covered in Secret 4. Secret 4. Your spending has an emotional driver you haven't identified yet. Systems fail when the heart isn't aligned. This is true spiritually, and it's true financially. Most people who live paycheck to paycheck aren't doing so because they lack knowledge about saving or budgeting. They're doing so because something in their relationship with money is being driven by an emotion they haven't named yet. 1 Timothy 6, verses 6-10 identifies this with surgical precision. Godliness with contentment is great gain. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. The love of money here isn't describing the wealthy. It's describing the posture of a heart that uses money to manage something it was never designed to manage: anxiety, identity, comfort, belonging, status, reward. Emotional spending is one of the most significant and least discussed drivers of the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. It looks different for different people. For some, it's stress spending. A hard day at work leads to an online purchase that provides a brief feeling of control or reward. For others, it's comparison spending, seeing what others have and feeling a pull to match it, not because of genuine need, but because of a quiet internal narrative about what their life should look like. For others, it's comfort spending, food, entertainment, small luxuries that soothe the discomfort that has nothing to do with the purchase. None of these drivers respond to a budget. You can have the most perfectly designed spending plan and still blow it consistently, because a plan addresses the numbers but not the heart behind them. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Everything, including every financial decision. The heart that hasn't examined what it's using money to manage will keep using money to manage it, regardless of the plan sitting in a spreadsheet somewhere. The practical work here is honest self-examination. The next time you make a purchase that wasn't in the plan, and you will because everyone does, pause before dismissing it and ask, what was I feeling right before I made this decision? Was I anxious, bored, frustrated, comparing myself to someone else, rewarding myself for something? The answer to that question is more valuable than any budget category because it identifies the real driver. And once you've identified it, you can address it directly, with prayer, with community, with an honest conversation with God about what you're actually looking for, instead of letting it silently drain every spending plan you ever build. Which sets up the final secret, and it's the one that makes everything else sustainable long term. Generosity is the cycle breaker nobody expects. Everything we've covered so far, the right order, the plan, the consistency, the honesty, the generosity practiced together, sustained over time, don't just break the cycle. They build something entirely different in its place. A financial life that finally reflects what you say you believe.